Hello, everyone. Good evening. So I'm Deepak, your host for the session. Let's get into the session. So what we are going to focus in this session, this is the second episode of How to X with AI. And what we are going to focus in this session is how to wipe code in AI PM interviews. I think the first half of the session, if you have read the notes, is all about how do we build like full stack apps. So in the last session, I covered how to build UI apps. In this one, like we'll focus in the first half on how to build full stack apps. In the second half of the session, we are going to focus on the how to integrate AI, right? Now note that I'll be focusing less on what exactly is the skill you need to develop, as in like it's too small a session to sort of show how to build AI products. What we'll be focusing on is more around a framework that you can follow to master the skills, evaluate your skills, and understand when you are ready for these interviews, right? Not to mention whatever we learn in the process of mastering these interviews is also something that will be used in our real jobs. So before we start, for those of you who don't know, I am Deepak. I've been helping PMs for last 5 years now. It started with a Growth Catalyst newsletter, which was focused around writing pieces on growth. A couple of years after, I published a book, Tech Simplified, which was aimed at helping non-technical PMs master technical skills. And then last 2.5 years, I've been building pmcurve, which is focused on helping PMs gain leadership skills such as product sense, strategy, growth, technical strategy, and now AI product management. In terms of the kind of products that I've seen, AI products I've been working for last 10 plus years. It started with housing.com. Then I actually was managing the AI products for Upgrad in its initial stages. And then at MXPlayer, I looked after content programming and recommendations. And this company later got acquired by Amazon. Then I was at Flipkart leading the voice search and conversational AI. And at pmcurve, again, I've been teaching AI, but we have also been building some products like AI assessment tools and AI interviewer. So all in all, like AI is a topic that I've been following for long. So I have seen it evolving. And I'm very happy with the progress it has made in the last 2.5 years. And that is what we are going to talk about today. A part of it is what we are going to talk about today. Now, because this is a vibe coding sort of session, I think this is relevant. We have already created a free course around AI prototyping. This is like 10 plus hours of lectures, and it is available on pmcurve.com. So if you feel some difficulty in what tool to pick, how to pick, like a lot of details is around all of these tools. And this is something that I taught 3-4 months back. So it's very, very relevant now, right? More than the tools, the focus is on the framework, I would say. And most importantly, it's a free course. So far, like I think 5,000 people have already gone through the course. And my sense is based on the feedback that we have, you would actually enjoy this course. Divya has put the link in the chat, so please check it out if you have time, or you can always go to pmcurve.com and check this particular thing. Now, agenda for this session is we do a framework recap from last session because I don't want people like who didn't come in last session to miss out on few critical things which are still relevant in this session. We then go into building a full stack prototype, and then we go into building a AI product prototype. If you have any questions, you can put it in chat, and I'll be picking from that. Okay, so let's get started. So in terms of recap, I want to start with the core skills. Now, this is something that I like to maintain whenever I do something around interviews, because at pmcurve, we have always been focused on the core job skills. Like we build courses around product sense, strategy, growth, and all of these courses are focused on just pushing PMs to excel better at their jobs. Because one of my core beliefs is if you do your job really, really well, you would actually be able to crack interviews very easily. The only problem that I have seen with people who are excellent operators is they don't prepare for interviews at all because they feel that because I've done a great job, I'll do well in interviews also, right? And because of that, they miss some good opportunities. But nonetheless, like if you have done good PM job, if you are good at core skills of a PM, I think you'll be able to crack interviews. In my career, like interviews have always acted as a feedback loop. So the idea of Tech Simplified came from a Google interview in 2018, where I actually miserably failed the technical round. And I come from like one of the elite colleges in India. I'm an engineering graduate. So, and I had prepared very well, right? So it was not lost on me that this is a problem everybody is facing. And that led to me first mastering technical aspects of PM job, but then also writing a book around it. And similar things have happened. Like job interviews are a reflection of what are the gaps that market sees in you, right? And nothing more, nothing less, right? Just that. And if you treat it as a feedback loop, it becomes a very good way to sort of do your job well, excel in your job, fill your blind spots, and actually create a very, very powerful career story for you, right? So I believe that the PM job and interviews are very parallel. And if I can transfer some of that belief to all of you, I feel that the entire PM community will immensely benefit, right? So that is where like, while this is like how to do vibe coding in AI PM interviews, the title of the session actually includes interview as the core thing. I believe that no matter whether you do an interview or not, the skill that I'm going to cover in this session is actually going to benefit you. Okay. Second thing is the vibe coding interviews getting introduced in PM rounds actually also talk about a shift in the core role and responsibility of the PMs, because so far designers were designing stuff, engineers were coding stuff, and we were focusing on strategy, PRDs, program management, and all these things. Now, one more thing has been added to that. The amount of overlap between engineering, PM, and designs has increased because one of the things that AI does very, very well, really, really well is it can make anybody an average designer. It can make anybody an average coder. It can make anybody an average PM, right? So it can take everybody to a decent enough, like it can make anybody a writer. By the way, honestly, like the biggest fear I had, because writing is something I love, was today, like anybody can just take anything that I write and they can use AI to write a decent piece around it, right? But even in absence of what I've written, like they can still write a good piece about, let's say, vibe coding or anything. So there is a shift in everyone's roles and responsibility, and vibe coding sort of rounds are just there to reflect that. Not to mention, we also talked about the core skills needed are still like product sensor design, UI prototyping, technical system design, RCS. Now, 3 of these 4 were still the core skills that we needed earlier, right? The only thing that has gotten added is UI prototyping. And you'll also see the way we solve problems also, right? In this session also, when I was building the PPT slides for this session, it was not lost on me that 80% of what I'm doing is actually core product management. Rest 20% is the new stuff. Contrary to the popular belief where we feel that this is like a skill that is on its own, like this will appear on its own in an interview, which is not the reality. So this was the first thing we discussed, and I'm just adding more color to it because now I'm like taking this session a week apart and I have done some more work. Now, interview formats, I think there are 3. First is like UI only products. Second is UI plus backend, which is full stack. And third is UI plus backend plus APIs from LLMs. Now, APIs from LLMs are not the only thing. You could also be asked to build an agent. So I'll add just agentic. APIs from LLM/agentic. Okay. We covered the first one in the last session. We are going to cover the rest of 2 in this session. Okay. In terms of interview format, there is live coding, there is take-home assignment, there is take-home assignment plus presentation. No matter which one you do, I think the core skill remains the same. It's just that the expectation from different interview formats is different. As you'll see in the live coding, when we are actually building some full stack app or sort of AI product, even if you don't complete it, we are still good. Even if you don't actually, even if you get stuck at some place, and you will get stuck 6 out of 10 times. it is good as long as you can show the interviewer that you have these skills. And we'll talk about those skills. But when it comes to take-home assignment or take-home assignment plus presentation, you have to do the complete product, right? You have to go through the entire process. You have to make sure that I's are dotted and T's are crossed and so on and so forth. Okay. So that's basically the interview format. And the third thing that I talked about in the last session and the last thing was the framework, right? And framework, again, is a derivation of what we already, it's parallel to circles if you are familiar with circles, but I personally feel that circles is a very suboptimal framework for PM interviews in general for PMs because it misses a lot of nuances. So I use a very simpler sort of framework, which is like start with clarify, which is in circles, but then just talk about like user segments, prioritize a segment and their needs, talk about the solution to those needs, prioritize by saying that these are the must-haves, these are nice-to-haves, and then we define some success criteria in product sense interview. But in the prototyping interview or vibe coding interview, what is happening is you have to do like MVP system design, you have to code it, and finally you have to test it, right? And which is where like these interviews become a lot more tricky, which is where I also propose that rather than having 30 minutes, I think we should give 45 minutes because this is product sense plus. Okay, so that is a recap for you with some color. Now let me go into full stack app prototype. So the kind of questions that you can get are the questions which will have backend along with the front end. So something like create an expense tracker could be one. Design a Q&A app because questions and answers need to be stored against usernames and all. Build a marketplace where users can list and purchase items. This could actually be useful if you're appearing for marketplaces like Amazon, Flipkart, DoorDash, Swiggy, Zomato. Create a social media scheduler that posts to multiple platforms. This is especially useful if you're appearing for SaaS platforms, right? Design a Q&A app, again, something that I built for myself as an educator. Create an expense tracker is a B2C app, but more towards personal productivity tools. So I would say like if you're trying to predict the type of question that can come in an interview, in a good interview, like you should look at the role that you're interviewing for, the company you're interviewing for, and you should also look at your experiences. And that is not just true about these sort of questions, but also true about any areas which are broad, for example, technical questions. So one of the technical questions I got asked 3 to 4 years back when I was interviewing for a firm was talk about like the buffer problem with YouTube. Like if YouTube is having a buffer problem, how will you solve it? And I was very surprised with the question because I was like, hey, why is this person asking about YouTube? And then I realized that I have an experience in video OTT, MX Player. So they were like just latching onto that and asking that question. And the right answer to that question was something that I never expected, which was I did everything, still like it didn't seem like the interviewer was happy. And then finally I said, Kisi, the only thing I can do beyond this is go to logs and see logs. And he was like, okay, that's great. So you understand that seeing logs is important for RCA. And I was like, you should have just asked me. But he was like, yeah. But if I had asked you, you would have known, right? But usually what I try to evaluate PMs on is, do they actually understand why logs are important? Because that means they have worked closely with engineers and all that, right? So a lot of these things, if you realize, right, very good interviewers are great at identifying what you have done in your career. Right? Not just the story. Storytelling is overrated. I'm going to tell you. Great interviewers are going to see through the stories and actually see that even if you don't have a great story, you have done a great job. Or even if you have a great story, you have done a bad job in your roles, right? That's a sign of a good interviewer. So anyway, so try to map like the kind of experience you have, the kind of experience you are aiming for, and you should be able to predict type of questions because honestly, these are a lot to tackle, and I would not want you to tackle a lot. I would want you to tackle the kind of questions based on the products you have built or based on the companies that you're applying for. Okay. Now, my prediction is if you sit tomorrow or day after, or even a month after, or even if I said today, some questions are going to make me uncomfortable, or they're going to make you uncomfortable. And there are only two reasons for that. First is its lack of practice. You have not done enough questions, you have not done enough variety. But second is something that nobody talks about, which is it could be a role fit issue. For example, if it's something like a cloud, let's say technical PM role for Google Cloud or Amazon AWS. Now that is something that I believe that somebody who has coded can be a much better fit than somebody who is non-technical. And that is something that you should understand in your careers, which is like, if it is a role fit issue, it's better to know and get a rejection, because an even worse thing that can happen is you try to sort of over prepare, you crack the role, and then when you go there, you actually don't end up doing well, because that is not something that either you have core competency in or not something that you intuitively sort of become better at, right? So one of the core tenets is to actually play in your areas of competencies, and that is why, like, definitely understand the symptoms of if questions are still making you uncomfortable, what sort of questions are they, and why is that happening? Is it lack of practice? Is it lack of role fit? A good book around this is actually The Inner Game of Tennis. Now it's like, the reason I put this book is because this book gives me a lot of confidence around a lot of things, especially when I was designing product sense course, and we were the first one to design and launch product sense across the globe. Because in my research phase, people were actually telling me that it's not possible to teach product sense. The good thing is Shreyas launched 4 or 5 months later, so people stopped asking the question, have you really started teaching product sense? Because that was a big validation. But nonetheless, when I was designing that course, this book actually helped me a lot, because one of the things you'll realize is you will see me solving few things, and you might get a perception that, like, I can't do that. And that happens in tennis also. Like if you have seen skill-based games like cricket or tennis, I have played cricket, I'm trying to learn tennis. One of the things that you realize is if you look at like how experts are doing things, it almost feels unachievable. And yet, like, you'll see people mastering that again and again and again through reps, through very boring repetitive reps. The worst thing is these experts can't even explain you how they do what they do. That is true about product sense. That is true about tennis. That is true about cricket, right? So while like training can get you from place A to place B, B to C is something that I believe that our LLMs actually take us there. A to B is pre-training phase, which is where I would say, like, do a lot of practice. And don't look at like somebody who is sitting at C or somebody who is sitting at B and feel that, okay, but what if I don't reach there and all that? Because it's all about like those reps that you put in, right? So be very okay with learning. Anything is very, very uncomfortable. Like this is like, it's almost like a gym. You don't want to do it, but you do it because it's good for you. But that does not take away the sweat and the pain and the agonizing experience that you go through. Okay, so don't worry about these things. Some basic things about mindset, because I believe that is equally important with skills. Okay, so let's start with the designing a Q&A. Now, first thing, let's start with, we picked one question here. And first thing is, let's talk about designing a Q&A app is like asking clarifying questions about users' goals and constraints, right? Now, let's say, and I'll be taking some assumption and I'll be focusing on areas where you will sort of fumble, right? So the first thing is, of course, like you'll start with what is the goal of designing this app? And the sub question to that is, who are we? Are we Google who is designing this app, or are we a startup? And let's say we are a startup. We are an edtech platform who needs this feature for live sessions, right? And in these live sessions, we get both paid and free users. So we want the feature for both. And the goal from that perspective is engagement or CSAT, because a startup is looking for making their PMF stronger or looking for traction or revenue, right? So it could be like engagement CSAT, which is a predictor of PMF, revenue or conversion, which is a predictor of like people's propensity to pay and whether it is actually sort of leading to the business goal, which is revenue. Now, the kind of segments that we talk about, the second thing that you talk about once you understand the goal is the segments. And that is where the instructors and moderators come in. and learners come in. Now, the question here is, if you look at the segmentation, I've picked just 2 dimensions. I've not picked like multiple dimensions. And the reason is very simple. I believe that these are the dimensions on which the Q&A app experience will change. For example, like if you look at instructors with very high volume of learners versus instructors with low volume of learners, the Q&A app has to be designed very differently. If there is very high volume of learners, it needs to collate questions. It needs to sort of prioritize questions. It needs to filter out questions. You need to build a lot of features so that it can prioritize the question for the instructor. But if the volume of learners is low, instructor can do everything themselves. Similarly, paid versus free. Free may you can remove auth, you can remove a lot of other things. In free, you'd also try to control filter out the NSFW content and all, because free people who are coming ungated can actually add a lot of random things also. So the thing is, a product experience fundamentally changes across these dimensions when these are like, these are like good dimensions to think around. So suppose like we are saying that in this segmentation, we are saying we are a startup. Now this is where you show the judgment call. You say that because we are a startup, my assumption is the number of questions per session will be low. Is that correct? And maybe the answer is yes, maybe the answer is no. Depending on that, your solution changes. But the core thing is to actually show that you can make an intelligent assumption based on whatever information you have gathered so far, rather than asking, okay, what will be the volume of learners? Can you tell me? And then what is the distribution of that volume for sessions and all that? A lot of questions are not good for you in the interviews, right? The second is paid versus free. You can say, because we are a startup, we will go for paid and free both, because we want to gain traction first and then conversion. We don't want to build just features for paid users. And again, validate whether like this is right or wrong, right? I'm going a little fast in this section because I know that you folks already understand these things, right? So I'm just aligning you to requirements. And the next thing is narrating the solution or core features, right? Tell me this thing, is my voice fading?
No, you're good, Deepak.
Okay. There was some comment. Okay, so narrating the solution or core features and list nice to haves. Now this is where there are 2 options you have, because you are interviewing, you're now using AI tools, right? The first option is you can just take this 5-line requirement and you can put it to Claude. Now I would say don't do that. And the reason is because the kind of PRD that you'll get will be huge to filter through. The second thing is you still want to show the judgment that you have, right? It's ultimately the problem that LLMs will create for PMs in the long run, and a lot of workers for the long run is there is certain value in remembering and applying stuff without having some help. So in college, we had both open book exams and closed book exams. You could argue that we could always have open book exams. The problem with that is we need to have some things fed into our working memory, because that is where we can think on the next level. And that is where we can think on the next to next level. If you always have to fetch some information from LLMs, you would fail to actually think very critically around product decisions. And a very simple, even before the LLM era, I have a very simple analogy that I've always advocated my PMs to do, right? Let me share that, because I think that actually explains it better than just making simple assertion. So at least since Upgrad, which was 2017, 2018, like I've been managing teams for 10 years now. But Upgrad is where I had my first product team, like people reporting to me in product team. So since Upgrad, like I have always told PMs to look at numbers every day. Now you might say, but analytics tool have all the numbers, isn't it? So why does a PM needs to look at number every day? Is the reason that there is some change? And my sense is no. The reason is not that there is some change. I want them to remember the numbers. So one of the way I measure PM's competency, growth PM's competency at least, is do they have numbers in their head rather than in the dashboard? Because if you have numbers in your head, you start merging it with every contextual discussion you have with business, marketing, sales, and everyone. And you are able to think about things by merging different contexts that usually somebody who does not remember the numbers won't be able to. And that's the benefit of even designing the solution here. You have to show that you can still design a solution, write a PRD without LLM. In fact, if you take my advice, please write your PRDs, first version of PRDs by yourself, then go to LLM. That way, I believe that you'll become better thinker over time versus sort of directly going to LLM. Anyway, coming back to I think we have these requirements. Users submit questions, upvote questions, follow-up comments. Platform's job is to rank them. Admin job, which is the educator's job, is to add answers. Mark questions as done, discard, or not answered yet. These are 3 states. Platform's job is to create the authentication flow. Platform's job is to create a team member. Platform's job is to enable creating a team member. And then platform's job is to add a NSFW filter because educator can't do it by themselves in the platform. Now, if we are talking about the core features, I'm going to then say that which are the must-haves. So for my MVP, because see, this is like where I have to build a prototype also. So I can't pick a lot of things. So I'm going to say my MVP will have submit questions, upvote questions, rank them based on upvotes. And then admin can mark questions as done, discard, not answered yet. Because anyway, if it's a live session, then the educator is going to pick the questions and answer it live. It's not that they're going to sitting and writing the answers themselves. So there's no point of adding comments or something like that, because educator can also ask the person who had the question to come with a follow-up question, right? They don't need comment. Authentication is something which you can add here, but adding a team member or adding a filter is not needed because you would have like very small audience. And most of this audience will be very, very high intent because you are a startup. You don't have like millions of followers. So now from here on, you can't write a PRD and give requirements. So you want to use a LLM. Okay. So let me show you a little slowly because I've already done this. So this is the prompt: act as a product expert, help me create requirements for designing a Q&A app. Below is the context. I added the entire context, just copy pasted. We define the goal, segments, learners, possible features, because most probably you won't have the time to edit everything. So you just copy paste it. Now, once you copy paste it, you get this big sort of PRD. Now, this has 2 problems. First, if you take this to a sort of prototyping app like Lovable or Replit, that will get confused, super confused, because it's too much. So what do you do? First thing, you take out some areas. For example, you take out success criteria, you take out launch strategy, you take out risk and mitigation, you take out future consideration. If you have already done it 1 or 2 times, you already know that you don't ask it to create a PRD. You say, create me these sections, which is create user personas or create functional requirements. Don't create non-functional requirements, right? Only create MVP features and so on and so forth. So you can even modify this with a simple context and go there. But suppose like you're putting it directly, or suppose it is not following your commands, because it will not follow your commands like to the T. LLMs are, I would say, known for that. So just look at the main titles and just remove those things so that it becomes shorter. So I say, let's take out these things, right? And let's put like scope out of scope and all that. Now the thing is, I have gone through it, right? So I will, don't worry about reading it. I'm going to take you through the most meaty parts. The second problem that happens is, so you took out the sections which are not relevant by just looking at top headings. That is a 1-minute job. The other minute job is to look at the critical aspects. For example, I saw that, okay, vote questions. Yeah, it's important. Submit question. This was important to me. This is important to me. This has included basic NSFW filter. I'm going to remember that. Now, of voting, it just put a votes into 10 plus is paid user into 5 plus it just created some formula, which I know in runtime will be hard to calculate. So why do I want to sort of create this kind of confusing formula for people? Because the users will also get confused. Teachers will also get confused, right? So I will find some of these things and see, I asked it to take out something, it added something. It added UI structure. And I don't want it to add UI structure because I want to use it to put it somewhere. It added data model, right? Now data model is good because I was going to ask it to add data model and it has still these things. So I remove some sections and I add more of requirement. Remove paid feature criteria and all that purely based on a votes. Remove user interface section. Remove technical constraints and assumptions. No authentication. And remove section 789. I directly and keep it short. Now, this is basically much easier for me to read. And here is where I realized, because while I was doing it, this will happen with you also, which is why I wanted to show you the raw method with which I did it. I then realized I don't want to take authentication out because that can invite a lot of garbage content. Like some people, some bad actors, if suppose like there is some bad actor, they get superpower to write anything if I remove authentication. So I say, okay, let's include authentication. But again, authentication may I know I have to be a little careful because it can get into the entire flow of authentication, and that is going to be a very complex thing to build. So I say that add access levels and allow username and email and password based sign up and login for now. And it does that. I review this. The final review will come now. Finally, now I'll read it quickly and then remove few more things. And I have the PRD ready. This is what I copy from here. And this is what I take. I took two tools actually. I wanted to test base 44. I know some people are testing that. I have not tested it yet. I would say like for one shot, this is a good output. But my biggest problem was like when I asked it about authentication and it was not able to figure out, I can see login option, I told it. It was not able to figure out that there is a logging option it has already built, right? So if I copy this and if I open it, let me see. It just built the login option, right? And when I'm asking it, okay, there is a login option, this is the URL, it's just going in loop. So this is where I left it. So one of my advice would be don't start with a new platform when you are building. That is why I wanted to show you this. Make sure that you are familiar with the platform that you pick for vibe coding. Okay. And make sure it's something that you have been continuously worked on. Now, what I did was basically I went to then Lovable, because Lovable is something that I have done. I built a lot of products on. So Lovable, I will show you. It's a different account. So I have to stop sharing and I have to go there. Okay. So this is Lovable for you. Okay. So first I'm going to show you the sort of this thing, the output, right? So the output was very good. This is an admin role. You can ask questions like for admin, like what you see is the option to discard or accept. And also like some AI response, which we'll talk about. But apart from that, I think this is a very basic Q&A panel that Lovable, I was able to build with Lovable, right? And when I say I was able to build with Lovable, I will show you how much pain it went through, okay? So this is where Okay, it will take some time to load because this was pretty large chat. Yeah. So there are few things that you'll have to note while I'm doing this, right? And please take notes if you want to, so that you don't miss it. So there are 2 or 3 things which are very important when it comes to working with Lovable. And I feel that you should test with other platforms also, because they are fundamental to how LLMs think and do. So the first thing is, like, don't ask it to first, like, ask it to create a plan step by step. So chord thinking is what we call it, which is like, go step by step and think about why this problem is happening. Think about how you're going to solve this problem. Think about what screens or user flows you will be building. And at this point, just use this sort of enable the chat so that it knows that you're asking it to chat. You're not asking it to code anything. And the first prompt has to be absolutely that. That's the first sort of tip. The second tip is, when it gets stuck, and it will get stuck, believe me. When it gets stuck, again, use the COT reasoning. Go get into the chat mode, ask it to think of all the hypotheses that it can think of, reflect back on what could be the real problem. Reflection is the second thing, which is when you ask LLMs to look at all the hypotheses and think about which ones are more prone to occur. And the third is like self-refinement. So self-refinement is asking it to check, like, can it automatically test itself? Can it write test cases? And that fixes more bugs than anything else, right? And again, something that you should never try firsthand in the interview, but something that you can do in your sort of free time. Okay, but the point is, like, you start with asking it to think about what it has to do. Now, in the real interview, what I would ask you to do is, don't read everything, because it gets very long. Just ask, like, just take a cursory look on whether it's speaking right or not, and then just say, okay, why don't you move ahead with it? At this point, it will ask you to sort of connect Supabase. Okay, so make sure that you have at least one backend ready, one dummy project ready, because if you don't have it ready, what will happen is, you'll have to go there. First of all, you have to go there. You'll have to log in. You'll have to create this project. You'll have to wait for this project, because it does not get created very, very quickly, right? So if I'm creating a new project, which is saying AI prototyping demo, and there is a password that I have to say, and if I create a new project, this in itself, you logging in, you creating something and all that will take a lot of time. So I would advise you to setting a project. This will take time. And you don't have like minutes, 5 minutes to just lose on this. So yours should be ready. You should just like connect to Supabase, one of the projects, dummy projects you have created. So just connect it to the Supabase project you have created and just move on. And what you realize is then you start testing. So the first problem that I faced was, there was an email confirmation flow. So I asked it to remove the email confirmation flow. Information flow is basically, you sign up, it confirms the email, and then only it allows. So I asked it to just remove the email confirmation flow, so that my testing becomes much, much easier. And it did that. And then it was able to produce something like this. Now, this is not great, isn't it? If you are really like thinking about design, this is not great. Now, the important thing is, can you think about how to write instructions to LLM so that this gets fixed? And the important thing to remember is, only pick battles first where you're sure about how to articulate. Or second, like where you are like, okay, this definitely needs fixing. For example, I said, okay, just like put sign out below the username, remove user, because there's no need to show a user their user. Put ask a question above Q&A feed and all that. Make these corrections. And it did those corrections. And it could get this entire thing to this, which is way better than the last one. Okay. At the same time, what you can also say is, I will not fix other things. I can see other problems like this, and this, but I will not fix it in the interest of time. The important thing here, by the way, like which I didn't cover, is a very important thing which we didn't do here because we had already done it in Claude, is data schema. So if you, in this interview, in this full stack interview, there are a couple of things which are fatal mistakes. The first is, if you can't look at the tables here and make sense of those tables, because that means you have not fundamentally, like you're not comfortable with backend or schema in general, data schema in general, questions, sessions, and all that, right? The second is, because if you're comfortable, what you will do is, you'll just go there and you'll see this diagram. You'll open this diagram, you'll show, okay, this looks good because we have everything. We have profiles, ID, username, role. This is tied to the authentication. Great. Votes has question, session, user ID. Great. Questions have session ID, username, text, important. Vote status created at, updated at, and all that. So questions has all this. And then sessions have this kind of thing. The important thing is, this is the most important part of this interview, because the UI prototyping skill we already talked about in the last session. If you have mastered it, you can show it just with Claude Code. Why did you come to Lovable? You can just use Claude Code to show that you can design a UI. If you want to build a backend and you came to Lovable, this is what you came for. This, it requires like you to understand authentication. This requires you to understand schema. This requires you to actually challenge the schema at times, because you can say that maybe like, this is a very simple one, but there will be places like in Tech Simplified book also you realize, right? Like there are places where you could take two calls. You could break a table or you could merge a table. And depending on like what sort of use case you have, you could break a table or merge the table. So just remember that this is one fatal mistake, that you can't come here and read and understand few things. The second fatal mistake is, if you get a wrong schema, which does not make sense, and you're still moving ahead with it. Okay. So if that is there, then after this, it all becomes like some bugs will be there, but my sense is Lovable is pretty good at building basic backend and basic web app. So you'll be good. The only place you'll struggle is, and definitely do this, is authentication, because authentication is something you'll be required to do in every app. And sometimes it gets stuck on RLS security and all those. So if you just build 2 or 3 authentication flows, I think you'll be good. And for interviews, I would say always pick the simplest authentication flow. Don't go for very fancy authentication flow. Okay. That shows that you have not built, first of all, build something. Second, you cannot predict how much time it will take. Okay. So that is basically my entire, I would say. Let me just go back. This is how we went to create a PRD. We took a tool of our choice, prompted to create clear requirements, and we tackle data schema primarily in such system design, not NFRs. NFRs are not something that you should be worried about. Okay. A lot of people will get stuck in NFRs, but the thing is that is not the skill that is getting tested with you in this interview. Now, the last thing I want to speak around this is, when you are using a tool like Lovable, Replit and all, there are 2 approaches. In this one, what I did was I fed PRD directly into AI prototyping platform. And I asked it to think about the approach, and I asked it to solve it. Remember that this approach has a big downside, which is there are multiple places where this could go wrong. When you give a large enough prompt to an agentic tool, it can make mistake at any of the steps. And if it makes mistakes in 1 or 2 steps, it can just first of all, it will be very hard to catch on, because it has written a lot of code. And it's very hard for it to go back and catch onto that mistake. And second is sometimes you'll not even be able to test it out or figure out what the edge case was, because of which this is breaking. And the same will happen with AI tool. So my sense is take this approach only when you get confident. Initially, start with the core and keep building around it. For example, the first thing that I would do if I'm starting on this project is, I would not ask it to build authentication first. I would ask it to build without the core page. The core page is somebody can ask question, somebody can avoid questions, very simply. Then I will say, okay, now you have asked question, avoid question. Now I want you to build a authentication around it. So sign in, sign up. And the third thing I would say is, now I want to make sure that some users can have admin roles. And with those admin roles, they can do X, Y, Z. So rather than giving everything in one go, I gave the requirement in 3 or 4 go. But this way I can test at every step. It will not take a lot of time, and I can still do the entire thing very, very well, very, very quickly. Okay. So make sure that you try out both these approaches, and then finally you end up designing this Q&A app. Okay, you test it, you close with success metrics. Now the thing is, the good response, just to summarize, if now I ask you to reflect back, do the same reflection we ask LLMs to do, what you end up realizing is ultimately it was a lot more about product sense and strategy, because it needed you to narrow down, make judgment calls on what to solve for, what not to solve for. It was a lot about understanding what sort of prompts work, what sort of prompts don't work. What sort of PRDs output do different tools give? For example, I use Claude for writing a lot. So I'm very comfortable with Claude. But if you don't use Claude, I would not advise you to go and use Claude, because prompt engineering for Claude is very different than ChatPRD, very different than ChatGPT, very different than Gemini. So use the tool of your comfort in the interviews as well. The third thing is highlighting where you would have taken more time while doing a real job, or taking a judgment call that if the LLM is stuck in something, asking whether it's actually important to solve, to showcase the skill that the interviewer is looking for. Because what they're looking for in this, additional to like all the skills that we talked about, is system design. Can you do the right data schema? Can you think about different places where authentication will be required, different places where things can go wrong and all that? Can you think about whether it's secure or not, right? Suppose you're building something for legal or medical. Can you think about compliance? If it's fintech, by the way, if it's fintech, the first question I would ask if I'm an interviewer is, why are you using Lovable? Are you sure it's that secure? So the thing is, depending on that, the system design concerns change, but data schema remains central to it. But depending on the problem, you have to think around whether you have taken good judgment calls in system design. The second is, can you connect it to a DB and test out the functionality, which is a sign that you have done these things previously, right? And you are comfortable with these things right now. So I can be assured, I as an interviewer can be assured that if I hire you, you'll hit the ground running and you don't need a lot of coaching. So these are the 2 core skills in building full stack app that you need to show. Not to mention, you don't need to show a lot more prioritization than building a simple UI app, because now you have the same amount of time, but you have to do double the work, isn't it? So do that. And that kind of concludes the first segment. What I will do is, I think in AI prototyping, I knew that we will have less time. So I've picked a very interesting sub case to show you like how to tackle that and focus more on important aspects. I'll take questions towards the end because in the interest of time, because I don't want people to lose on the meaty part. And I know some people will have to drop in next 15-20 minutes. Okay. So now for AI product prototype, what you have to understand is basically like we take the same app and we just change the prompt to design an AI powered Q&A app. Now, everything that we do remains the same. Okay. Except this part, where we have to narrate AI solution or core features. So for example, this part will help the interviewer understand whether you understand where AI can be applied and where it can't be. For example, user able to see similar questions that were submitted already while typing. So if I'm typing what is the capital of, it should auto suggest, okay, this is a question that has already appeared. Do you really want to ask it, or do you want to just like move ahead without asking it and upvote this? Second is it can club similar questions together. Not same questions because we are already doing it in the first stage, but platform can club similar questions together. And the educator can actually take similar questions in one go, thereby spending more time on the meaty part of that concept than taking one question, then another different question. A lot of context switching will not happen for students and teachers. And by the way, the way I'm explaining you, the reason behind it is very, very important to explain, because the product sense still lies at the core of AI features or AI solutions, right? The third is platform can create AI-generated answers to questions. And it can show them to either user or the instructor. We'll talk about that, user or instructor, on the prioritization framework. When we talk about the prioritization framework for AI, I will show you why like this kind of dilemma can be resolved easily by prioritization framework for AI features. The fourth is admin. If we are giving AI-generated answers, admin should be able to upvote or downvote AI-generated answers. User, if you are giving it to users should be able to upvote or downvote AI-generated answers. Fifth is what we already talked about, which is not safe for work kind of filter, which filters keywords which are abusive or images, if you build an image capability, images which are not good. And we already, from the core features, we had already picked something. And from here on, we apply something, a framework that I have personally sort of used in a lot of AI projects, which is RiceX. The way I pronounce it is actually AKS. AICS becomes longer, so RiceX. Rice you already know. X is basically AI capability and stakes. Is AI capable of doing it? And what are the stakes of this feature? So I'll just take some time to explain this. So suppose this is the first one, able to see similar questions. Now, I didn't go into the entire RICE. I just said, okay, impact effort. Let's take very simple impact effort. So impact here is not very high because at worst, like user is submitting another question because it's a startup. If it was a very large set of users, the impact would have been higher. But because these are like, we get at most 20 questions in a session, what are we going to do with similar questions? So the impact is actually low depending on the context. Not because impact is overall low for similar questions in a very, very high volume sort of class. Effort is also low because all you need is similarity search. You can just use similarity search APIs. Is AI capable of this? Yes. What are the stakes when it goes wrong? Because AI can go wrong. We are talking about a probabilistic model. If it goes wrong, what are the stakes? Not much, because user will just say that, okay, what is it suggesting? Not useful for me. I'll still submit my question. So at most, it distracts the user. So impact low, effort low, capable, yes, stakes low. What about similar questions together? Again, because it's a small scale, impact low, effort low, capable, yes, stakes low. If it is not able to club some questions together, which are similar, the stakes are still not that high. What are the stakes if it goes wrong? Not very high. Now let's come to this. Create AI-generated answers to questions and showing them to instructors/users. Let's entertain this. Impact is high because it can be an assistant to the professor. Right? Not assistant professor, but assistant to the professor. Okay. Effort is low because I can just integrate it with a general LLM and that can write an answer for me. So effort is low. AI is capable of this, yes. For most domains, yes. But yeah, you would have to fine tune for some other domains or use RAG for some other domains. But AI is capable. Stakes are low to high depending on how you build it. If you build a user-facing feature, the stakes are high because users will get super annoyed by this feature AI-generated answer that you have built, and they'll be feeling like shortchanged. Okay, are you telling? Worst, like they'll be feeling shortchanged if they catch that this is a bad thing, bad answer. But if they can't even catch that this is a bad answer, they will not follow up on that. They will just delete the question or they'll mark it as a resolved. And they have taken a wrong notion from your class. So the stake of it going wrong is high if it is a user-facing feature. And which is why you have to make it an instructor-facing feature. Because somebody who has the authority to verify AI should be gating AI. That's like one generic rule of AI products. Because that way you can always keep your stakes low. So I make my stakes low by showing it to instructor. Admin like or dislike AI generated answer, impact low, effort low, AI capable is NA. Like I don't need AI for getting this feedback. And stakes, NA. Now, the reason to put this here is because one of the tenets of, again, if you have done AI product management or if you are learning AI product management, what you'll realize is feedback loops are most important in the initial phases of the features because you don't know how AI will behave. Unlike software engineering, which is very deterministic, which has very deterministic use cases and test cases and all that, AI is very probabilistic. So you see like OpenAI building a lot of feedback features. It will show you two similar answers. It will ask you which one is good. Now, that is not just feedback for it. It is also training data for it. And it will also ask you to upvote or downvote any question, any answer that it provides, right? Platform filter, again, because it's a small group, 20 questions and all that, I would say, okay, maybe like we don't need to worry about it because impact is medium, effort is high. Actually, effort is not high. Effort is also medium. And stakes in this case will be low because number of questions is low, and it's not that a lot of people are coming with the intent to just like act in the bad faith. Okay. So we say that of these, we'll just prioritize one, AI generated answers, right? Now the question that you'll be facing is, should I include it in PRD in the first go, or should I include it after building the product? My advice would be, like, don't ask it to integrate, but maybe you can always, if you're going from the core, starting at the core and moving out, at the core, if this feature lies at the core, which is the main page, whenever you're building the main page, just integrate this feature. This allows you to do two things. First of all, the person sitting in front of you wants to see your judgment around AI products and whether you can integrate an API or build an agent or not. They're not looking for you to build a beautiful authentication flow and a complete product. So I would say move sooner to AI features than later if you are sitting in this interview. If you judge that time is less, go directly to it. Like just say that, okay, there are problems with this interface, the first interface that LLM has come with, but I'm going to let go of this. I'm going to show you like how I'll think around the AI feature and how I'll build it. Okay, so this is the first part. The second is make sure that you write 2-3 diverse test scenarios and test them because, like I said, AI is probabilistic. So you want to test it with diverse test scenarios. Okay. What we built was, again, I'm going to show you. This is like what we came up with. What I was able to do with Lovable. So this is like the admin. Admin can only see it. Students can't see it. And if I say, what is the capital of, say, India, it shows like question submitted, AI is preparing. the answer. And where is it? This is Murphy law. What is the capital of India? Okay. So the question is there. Now, suppose I'm stuck here, right? The question is, what do? You go here, you go to tables, you look at questions. So this is not my project. My project was this. I go here, I go to tables. So I can see that the answer is here, right, in this database. What is the capital of India? The capital of India is New Delhi. It serves as seat of the government and is part of larger national capital territory of Delhi and all that, right? So I can see it here. What I don't know is, yeah, it is now loading. So there is a loading issue that I have to fix, but nonetheless, it is able to generate this answer. Now, I'll tell you one thing, right? It took me, one of the things that Lovable fails at is seamless integration with OpenAI. And you can see that because I started with OpenAI integration, this simple integration here, and it took a lot more pain to get it done right. Implement the plan. I have now added API keys. Why am I not able to show AI answers? I'm discussing, right? And then I said that login has broken. And then I said that the real-time answer generation is not happening. And we went on and on with this simple API integration, right? A lot of errors, and finally it was working. The point I'm trying to make is there have been times when it gets it in the first go. So if you get stuck in a loop like that, there could be there could be like two ways to save yourself. First, you can say that I have done this, somehow it's misbehaving. Because if you go into fixing this problem, you better know like how to fix the problem, right? So you can say, I can fix the problem. I've fixed the problem before, but right now it's misbehaving, right? And believe me when I say that, it might feel like an excuse, but if you've really done it, the way you frame it actually tells the interviewer that you're telling the truth, right? Because they can ask a follow-up question if they feel like you're bluffing, right? The second thing is basically just tell them how you will troubleshoot it. How you will troubleshoot is basically you can tell them that I'll ask it to hypothesize. I will then ask it to sort of ask it to think on how we will test different hypotheses. Then I will go into asking it, okay, if it makes the changes, how will it test the changes? And then finally, I will ask it to go hypothesis by hypothesis, implement, test, implement, test, implement, test. If it still does not happen, I will ask it to go through logging. Basically, where are the logs failing and all that. Now, the thing is, this kind of nuance you'll only be able to come up with if you have actually done the work. So I would not worry if the LLM misbehaves when I'm actually doing this in an interview. I have to be prepared for it. I have to anticipate that it will misbehave. Okay. And let that be the final lesson, which is like, it is going to misbehave. So just make sure that you actually prepare for it. Okay. So that's more or less, I would say, I wanted to discuss. There are a few more things. One is this, like, what do you do when you get stuck in the loop? And I talked about like the couple of strategy. The important thing to remember, the mental model I want you to remember is, if you look at the job of a PM, and if I share this kind of thing with you, PRD, MVP, code, bug fix, production, this is where it will get stuck. And the question I want to ask you is this really the job of a PM? Is fixing bugs really the job of a PM? And the answer to that is no, it's not. You should understand that bugs happen. You should understand by now that if you work with developers, that bugs will come and they need some time to fix and all that. So it should not baffle you. That's the role of a PM. The role of a PM is not to fix bugs. Because what I don't want you to do is go into this rabbit hole of, how do I learn how to fix bugs? See, 80% of bugs you'll be able to fix by just applying common sense and problem solving abilities if you practice well enough. The last 20% will take 90% extra time. I don't want you to go into learning specific techniques to bug fix, because those techniques are going to change. You will have to catch up and all that. And anyway, that is not your core job. Your core job is to focus on PRD, focus on defining MVP, focus on like the final output that LLM is giving, asking it, focus on like what could go wrong with that, what is wrong with that. For example, like one of the things that Lovable still got wrong, I will show you, like it made some changes. It made it work, but it made some changes which will introduce security loopholes in the product. Like it literally made some changes. I'll just read them out for you. I don't want to. It made some changes, like it disabled JWT verification. It removed authorization headers from database triggers. And by just reading that, I was like, this is definitely some problematic thing. I went to Claude, I asked you, okay, explain it to me. And it said, yeah, these will lead to security problems, because then anybody can just hit your API and they can submit some response to a question. So point is, your goal is to understand the limitations of these tools. Your goal is to understand that bugs will be part of these tools and all that. Your goal is to actually like build some decent prototype on top of these tools. But your goal is not to fix bugs and learn how to fix bugs. Okay. So again, in good response, I would say like show why you will pick a particular model here. Like we picked GPT-4o, but depending on reasoning versus non-reasoning, you can pick a model. And in some problems, I think I'll do some future sessions around prompting. I'll show you how to write like decent system prompt, not user prompt, system prompt, right? The second more important thing is just use RiceX to think about features that you can build today in your product. And can you prioritize it based on AI capability and stakes? If you want detailed sort of info around it, I actually wrote something called AI capability metrics on newsletter. You can just go and you can read this. This is a very detailed AI capability metrics. It does not ties to RiceX. RiceX is an evolution of this, but at least you'll be able to understand like where I'm coming from. Okay. But use this to prioritize some of the features that you can think of in your current product, right? The next few sessions, not few sessions, maybe next session or next to next session, I'll try to cover how to build AI agents. Now I've already covered it on how to build AI agents in one of the like AI prototyping sessions, but this will be more towards the framework rather than the specific tool. Because I feel that when it comes to tooling, Claude can help you build something on a tool, or you will also find a lot of YouTube videos which talk about how to use n8n, how to build n8n, gumloop, langgraph. So my role is to merge AI with product management or tooling with product management frameworks, rather than just, focus on how to use this tool and all that. Okay. And I'll go to Q&A now with one final sort of this cohort announcement. So we have a AI PM cohort that runs for a couple of months. We are concluding the second cohort. We are going for third cohort from 20th September. You can go to pmcurve again and you can check the program page, apply on it. And if you are already a PM, there's a very good chance that you'll get shortlisted. So just check the program, apply if it feels right for you, because we cover a lot of interesting things like AI prototyping, system design, and of course, agentic and everything. If you feel it's good for you, go and apply. Or yeah, just keep attending these sessions. Okay. So now coming to Q&A. Let me go to the chat. And folks, if I miss your question, please repost it. Okay. Any specific reason you picked Claude over others, and it does not matter which LLM is picked? So for writing, for PM specifically, I found Claude to be the best. I would say like just go for Claude if you are still in two minds on which LLM to use. Claude is good for knowledge workers. We have already seen its supremacy in coding with cursor and all. I'm here to kind of, I want to be an unpaid advocate of Claude because I love it so much. I always find it a great thinking partner, a great writing partner and all that. So I just want to spread that into the world. Can you put the prompt back up? I think prompt, what we'll do is we'll update these slides with some of these prompts, and we'll share that whenever we share this on our YouTube channel. And we will also add it to our learn.pmcurve.com platform. So there is a How to X with AI course that we have designed there. And we keep adding this series of lectures along with PPT there. So we'll also update it there. So prompt and everything will update. Any platform preference to vibe code on, lovable, how to get sufficient credits for playing around? Again, I would want you to take a more long-term view and ask yourself a different question, which is how much learning budget can you allow yourself this for next 2 years so that you can stay relevant in your career? My answer to that was at least $500 for myself. And which is why like I don't worry about trying out different tools, because in $20, I can try any tool for a month and see how it goes for me. But again, that's it. Like that is me. But you can even if you decide like $100 of budget, you can try out 5 tools. And as it gives you more and more confidence, my sense is your number will keep shifting, because the thing is we do earn good, right? Well and good. And investing in there's nothing better than like not even a great stock is the better investment than investing in yourself. So I would say like, given that this field is changing immensely, my sincere advice is to invest in yourself, especially in learning these things, right? So tools and all, keep exploring, keep a budget. Of course, don't go over this budget, but keep a conscious budget and try to spend that much. The second thing is Lenny and all. I think there are newsletters like Lenny, for example. He has done a great job in bringing tools together, so you can check that. And you can also sort of apply to these tools, email these tools for startup credits, and also try out those things. But my sense is don't lose your time in doing a lot of these optimizations. Just take a budget for learning for next 2 years, because that is where the flux is going to be highest. And those who actually sort of sail through this flux will get rewarded, isn't it? Right? It's basically like almost like laws of physics. So try to maintain that edge and see it as an investment that you are doing in yourself more than anything. Are we expected to have paid accounts of the tools for interview? Yes, I would say like at least have one paid account for one tool. So for example, Lovable, Claude, like 2 or 3 different kind of tools. If you are in interviewing phase, given that a bad offer versus good offer makes a lot of difference for you, career-wise and money-wise, why lose out on this thing, right? That just feels foolish to lose out on this front. So definitely have paid accounts for the tools that you love, because they will ask you to choose a tool of your own choosing and work on it. So you don't need to have paid accounts on multiple tools, but at least one tool of each kind. One for writing and research, which is Claude or GPT or Gemini. One for prototyping, and possibly one for database. Those are like the budgets that you should assign. Can you please share more about the backend part, Supabase, that you mentioned? So I have talked about this in the AI prototyping course also, But if there is a follow-up question, Aditya, please put it down, because share more, I can answer specific questions, but as for share more, yeah, it's very hard for me to figure out where to go in which direction, right? If the only guidance I'll give you is the same guidance I was giving earlier, which is think a lot about the schema. Think a lot about the system design, high-level design, schema. If you figure out the schema right, you can just feed it into any tool like Lovable or Replit, and it will be able to create the same tables in database. So you don't have to worry much about this. The only time when you need this to see this database again is if something is going wrong, like you saw me going through a table and seeing if the rows are updated in the right manner or not. So bug fixing or testing, you will again need to go into these tools. But barring that, if you have figured out the data schema, there's a good chance you don't need to be proficient in Supabase. You just need to be able to read the tables, understand where are tables, where is the diagram, where is authentication and all that. Very simply, like think of the broad elements and figure out where they are in a particular tool. Moreover, don't even do that. Try to build 2 or 3 backend apps. And it will be a forcing function for you to figure out like where those things are, right? But please ask a follow-up question if you have any specific questions. Once the first version is ready and you have identified what you want to be edited, how do you isolate the problem in Lovable and ensure it does not change the rest of the parts which were not supposed to be changed? Okay, so that's a great question. So the question for those of you who didn't understand it, it's basically you have gotten the first version. And now, just like you saw, the first version had the design very poor, right? Now, the way to ensure that it only changes the parts that are supposed to change is to do it in 2 steps rather than 1 steps. And the 2-step process is, in the first step, you give it the requirement. This is what I want you to change. Can you tell me what all will you change? And put it in chat mode. Do not code yet. Okay? Do not code yet. Just tell me what you are going to change. And let it speak. And there you'll be able to catch if it is going and changing something else entirely. So you read it carefully and then you say, okay, please move ahead. So that is how I sort of make sure that it does not waste my time by doing anything that can be broken down into multiple verifiable steps. Do it like that. Don't try to be super fast with these tools, because anyway, they're going to waste a lot of your time if you try to find the quickest path possible. Okay. I hope that answers for you, Piyush. There is another question. How should we answer if the interviewer asks whether these tools can be scaled for 1K, 10K users? Will these aspects be evaluated as well? So that's an interesting thing. And this question has more to do with, curiosity than sort of actual answer. Because it's a good way to test whether this person actually thought about scalability when they were building something on their own or not. And what you'll end up realizing is there is actually no good answer to this. Supabase can scale. The main problems with Supabase or like Lovable prototypes is not that they can't scale. The main problems are actually security flaws. And the main problems are also that the code that is written is in a suboptimal way. So I would give you a different problem. I would ask you to build a thesis around when not to use these tools and what not to rely on in these tools. Because we have seen the problem, right? Like we have seen multiple vulnerabilities in these tools, and because of which even the ones which are working well got hacked. Because all you need is a single, like think of it like this. The code written by smartest developers, they still have like bug bounty. And here is a code which has not been even read by a very smart developer, and you are trying to ship it. So try to build your thesis on what should be done with AI prototyping tools and what should not be done. When somebody asks me whether it should be scaled to 1K or 10K users, my answer, if you ask me, is I don't want to put it in production. Why should I put it in production? I need a developer who can actually read this and do everything. Like I can have it for internal use, but not be anything beyond that. Unless a developer actually reads through this entire code, fixes things, figures out vulnerability and all that. And if I have a developer for that, why can't I ask that developer to just scale it to whatever I want you to, why I want it to be scaled to, right? But the right answer to this is, first of all, it should not go without review, proper review. The second is, yeah, these can be scaled to like 1,000, 10,000 K users. And it depends on how much we are willing to spend and all, because all these are proper databases. There's nothing that you can't scale. They would not build it like that. It's unlike, those no-code tools, because it's not no-code. Supabase is a proper database, right? So it will be able to handle scale. Love the dimensions of Q&A app. Shouldn't one clarify further if it should be integrated within live session app or standalone? Can you think of moonshot ideas with integration in line with spirit of products and interviews? Yes, amazing. Definitely. Like that should definitely be a question. That should we integrate it in the live session app or should it be standalone? The only reason we didn't go in that direction is because, again, it was the prompt and the scope of the interview in my mind was basically it's a feature we are building. And tomorrow, if you want to integrate, we can integrate. So I think that subtext needs to be mentioned, to be honest. That, okay, if we want to integrate it tomorrow, we can integrate it. But we can also have a common authentication for both the apps. The thing is, you can't do anything around that particular requirement in the interview. So even if you just miss it, I think it won't hurt you. But if you add it, it definitely helps your product sense assessment. Can we share the entire PRD to Lovable? Ask it not to start coding immediately. We can then converge with Lovable and guide it to build section by section. Will hybrid approach like this give a better output, or it has disadvantages in out? Again, like a lot of things in LLMs, I can't be definitive about. In fact, no one can be definitive about unless they have tried it. I have not tried this. I either take the PRD, refined PRD, and ask it to build, or I sort of start at very small prompt and do it. And the reason is twofold. First of all, I either want a one-shot, everything solved, and then focus on fixing bugs, or I want to be conscious about just giving it enough so that it does not make mistake. You're either making sure that bugs are less, or you're making sure that you can resolve bugs and everything is done in one go, right? There is a middle path, and honestly, I don't know. My sense is that the problem with Lovable is, which is what you'll realize is, it also tends to add a lot of code. And because you're putting this in its context window, you don't know when it will get started on it. So if you put this entire PRD, what will happen is you will have to verify again and again that whatever narrow use case you're giving it, is it just doing that, or is it adding two more things from the previous window? Because ultimately for LLMs, it's just context window. And the longer this context window is, the worse the LLMs are at following exact instructions. So purely because of that, I would say that this will be a suboptimal approach. But at the same time, it also provides a lot of context to Lovable, because of which it can take better calls. So you can try it out, and yeah, I'll also try it out and see how it pans out. But those are like broadly the hypothesis around it. Can these vibe coding apps also help us with setting up success metrics, KPIs, and basic analytics? I think Elena posted around it Lovable, like they're building growth features, which means that success metrics and KPIs and basic analytics will be a part of it. As for now, I haven't seen it. Like you can definitely ask it to set up GA Pixel, but that GA part, like setting up GA, Google Analytics, you have to do. But if you give it Pixel to sort of set up on the app, it can definitely do that. If you ask it to track a particular button track event, it can definitely do that. That much understanding it has. You just will have to guide it more. And my sense is they're building it out of the box over time. Right. So this is more about analytical implementation, not defining success metrics. Right. would you consider modify capability to AI assisted answer from admin side? Modify capability to AI assisted answer preserves the humanness and crispness of the response, also doesn't disappoint the user with 100% AI generated response. Yeah, we can. I don't get the answer complete, question complete. Angad, can you clarify? I am not
Sure.
sure.
Sure, Deepak. So, for example, you had a question around New Delhi. It had a very elaborated answer, and it looked like it was from an LLM. So, instructors can add in their magic by making it crisp, by adding more context
Got
to
it,
AI
got it.
assisted answer.
Definitely, definitely. So that is a feature, right? It's not even an AI feature. What I would also want you to think is, rather than going in that direction, can you create a system prompt and ask it to provide only crisp and clear answers, right? Because right now I'm directly hitting the GPT AI APIs, and which is what a tool will do when I ask it to integrate API. But ultimately, GPT allows you to build assistants which have their own system prompts. So based on the, let's say it's a K-12 maths, you can ask it to sort of act as an expert tutor and all that and speak in that language. If it's a legal assistant, it will speak in that language and all that. So two solutions to this. One is definitely this. The easier is let them modify. The much harder, but maybe like something that will impress somebody is you solve it, try to solve it as much as possible on system prompt level so that effort of educators is less. And then let them modify also. Right? So both solutions.
Sounds good. Multi-layered is what I understand.
Multi-layered.
Deepak,
Yeah.
can I ask you just one clarifying question to what you just shared?
Sure, sure.
Yeah. So you spoke about vibe coding and integrated versus standalone app. I wanted to clarify, in product sense, we go for one-shot ideas, right? You laid down the structure that we're designing a Q&A app, but if I were to think as a PM, I would think of something grander in the sense that how can I make this product more adoptable? And if I have a live session app, then integrating in it. But it is against the idea because vibe.
Angad, you could turn off the video and you could speak.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for that opportunity. So in a product sense interviews, I'm expected to come with moonshot ideas. So the expectation is I'll come up with those, how I increase adoption of existing app. But in a vibe interview, I'm meant to show a prototype, which means I cannot go for this thing. How would you suggest I optimize given the format? Should I
See,
clarify
the
with
thing
the
is, the thing is, it's all about, it's a story you are weaving, right? And there are constraints to it. So one of the ways you can always show that you can think about this is by saying that while I'm choosing this path, right? I would have, in a real world, if I was building something for this startup, I would build something very truly differentiated. But since that will take a lot of time, and you can talk about that truly differentiated experience also. You can say that it would be basically something like the JTBD for Q&A app, for example, is to resolve doubts from students, right? So to resolve doubts from students, can I then create a very integrated experience where there is a two teacher model, right? Which Baiju's introduced, where while I'm teaching, the student can always ask questions and they will first get AI generated answers and explanations and all that. Now, this entire thing works on my knowledge base. Like if I'm an educator, I have slides and all the content. It takes inspiration from my knowledge base so that it is grounded in the truth. But so its accuracy is way better. And I will of course test the accuracy. But the first layer is actually AI generated answer. And this AI generated answer accuracy and everything will track over time, will make it very, very accurate rather than going after building a basic Q&A. So you can always say that and then move on to build this, because the matter of the fact is you can't build the other thing in the interview, right? Or maybe if an interviewer is like me, I would say, oh, Angad, why don't you go and try to build a very basic version of that? Isn't it? And let's go deeper and deeper into how will we know that this is actually working, how will we know this is not working and all that. But you leave it on interview, and the same happens with strategy problems, for example. Strategy problems are very broad. You can take 10 directions. So at the end of a strategy interview, you'll always feel that I have not covered few things. But rather than leaving it then and there, you can always say, by the way, in a real life, I would have thought about right to win. I would have thought about, industry, sort of how ecosystem is changing and what are the implications of that. I would have done a much deeper structural analysis using Porter 5 forces. The thing is, this pretext tells the interviewer that you know more than what you're telling in the interview. So if you have that kind of sense, definitely don't lose it. Don't hear to anybody that this is a framework you have to use in interviews. Right? Frameworks are there to save time and display your competencies and all that, but don't lose your edge. Don't lose your experience.
Thanks a lot. Super crisp and really helpful. Thanks for the context.
Is Replit better than Lovable? In my experience, no, but again, I've not tested it recently. You see, Replit is agentic, which means you give a prompt, it will code the entire thing for you. There are 5 problems that I can count purely because of that. First of all, AI is not there. Second, if you code once, like in one shot, it has more chances of introducing bugs. You will not be able to figure out those bugs because you're not a coder. And like these are like a lot of problems with Replit. You using Replit, I would want you to use more decomposable sort of experiences rather than agentic coding experiences. What about Perplexity? No, please don't use Perplexity. Sorry, I said that. You can use Perplexity, but in my experience, Perplexity is good for very basic queries. It's not great at any of the things. It's good at internet search. It's good at writing. It's good at fetching very quick queries. It's good at, you can just play with models and all that. But anybody who has built AI products knows that when you hit an API and get a response versus when you actually go to ChatGPT or Claude and you write something and get a response, both are actually very different. So for personal use, I would not actually use Perplexity because I feel that it gives me very average answers. But yeah, for a consumer product, as in like most people have basic queries in Google search, for them it's great. But for somebody like a PM, I would not say that Perplexity is the best software out there. Is using Cursor or Claude will be the same as Cursor is also using Claude Sonnet model or similar tools, don't matter much. I paid Cursor, not Claude. So Aditya, I'm not sure if your background is coding because Cursor is something which is more coder friendly. Lovable and Claude are like more, I would say, user friendly, as in like non-technical user friendly, right? So for technical folks, people who have done a little bit of coding, I would ask you to go and try Cursor also. It's actually good.
So one follow-up on this, Deepak. So yeah, I do not have the background for tech and not coding. But is the output also something which can be different if we say for Cursor?
Yeah. The reason is because even if that's an interesting question. I would not answer this question actually now. So what I know is that the Claude has done a lot of fine tuning. Whether Cursor has fine-tuned models or not is what I don't know. So Cursor differentiates itself in different ways. One is, of course, like it has context of your entire code and it has built a command and line sort of interface for developers. So that way, like those are the differentiation factors. But what I don't know is whether it has fine-tuned the Claude model or it is directly using that. If it is directly using that, for Vibe Q coding, there is no difference, right? But if it has fine-tuned it further, like Copilot has fine-tuned GPT, right? Copilot has not used GPT APIs. It has taken GPT APIs and it has fine-tuned the entire model. It has literally changed the weight of the parameters, right? So if that is not happening, then yeah, I think it's the same. But for example, GPT and Copilot are not the same because of that fine tuning.
Got it. But
Just check that out. I'll also check it out. It's something that I've not checked yet.
probably the product intuitiveness is something which is different as compared for like Cursor versus Claude being a
Exactly. That's why I said it's dev friendly. One is like, think of like we talk about the user personas and their pain points, right?
Mhm.
Cursor is hyper focused on backend devs and like devs in complex environment. Whereas Lovable and all are focused on non-technical users. So both have very different ICPs. And because of which both will, not just today, even in the future, they will make very different calls.
Got it. Cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
But whatever subscription you have, just use it to the best so that by the time it expires, you are expert in this. Just don't fall for sunk cost fallacy, which is if you realize okay, this is not going anywhere
Hmm.
and still you feel I have paid for this. It's almost like going to a movie who you know is going to be bad, but you're still going to a movie because you have paid for the ticket. Does not make a lot of sense, but we still do it because we are irrational beings. So that's the only place where I would ask you to avoid. But if you have paid subscription, definitely explore it to the extent that you can make a decision. Either way. Yeah.
Right. Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, folks, for joining. Thank you for staying so long. Sorry for taking more than what I asked you to. Take care and good night, good day. Thank you for all the love.